Making money in your tradie or contracting business is hard enough, and unfortunately, almost nobody has been taught the key financial metric for assessing what type of jobs are most profitable. And this lack of information is causing so much financial hardship that it's a crime. Tune into this episode where we reveal the number one financial metric you must understand around your job profitability so you can grow and scale a successful business. Alrighty, welcome to the Profitable Tradie Podcast, here with your host, Tony Fraser-Jones, and my co-host, Phil Smith. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good, mate. Good, always good. Pumping along.
Yeah, just fiddling with some dials there. Happy days. Get it all working well. Yeah, you love to fiddle with a dial. What are we into today, buddy?
We're talking about how we should price our work. So nice, juicy topic for everybody today. And I suppose a lot of people price their work differently, right? Like some people will start with a markup, others with a margin. Some people look at their hourly rate. Some people looking at what materials are going in there, mixture of all the above. And a lot of people sort of figure out their own little way of mashing all that together and coming out with some kind of result. And honestly, I think a lot of people are thinking, some of my work's really profitable and some not so much. Like if you're listening today, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to pinpoint, hey, some of my work's crushing it and some of the other work is kind of dragging that profit back down. And you might even be wondering, how do I actually figure this out? What type of work is performing and what's not? And, should I continue to do that work that's not performing so well? Or am I actually able to improve that again? Further from that, once you actually have this information, you start to wonder, well, what sort of work should I be marketing for? What should I be trying to get more of? So maybe I cut some, maybe I get more of some, maybe I improve some, but it's like, where do I start and how do I actually make a comparison between all this information?
Yeah, there's the other pricing method, which is the just pull a number out of the air method, which unfortunately gets used as well. But
the old PAFOOMA method?
The PAFOOMA method,
pull the
that's
figures
right.
Out of my
Yeah, that's right. But there is one number that you really need to understand with your pricing and your job profitability if you want to maximize your profit. And this is one of the keys to success in your contracting, your tradie business, is to get the most profit off the jobs. That's the engine room of profitability for your business. If your jobs aren't as profitable as they can be and they should be, then you don't have enough money to pay for your overheads, and there's not enough money left over for profit for you for taking the risk of running a business, and that's what you deserve. So in today's pod, what we're going to do is actually explain what this measure is and how you calculate it, and I think this is going to be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, big time. And I'm sure you got a story to kick us off.
I do have a story. It's about a very famous basketballer, Allen Iverson, played for the 76ers, and kind of a loved and hated figure. And he was known for his incredible scoring ability. He'd take shots from everywhere and anywhere, and often didn't let anyone else take any shots, which was maybe part of the problem. Yeah. He wasn't a big guy, just just over 6 foot tall, but he scored a lot of points. He averaged 26, 27 points per game, it was pretty epic. And he won 4 NBA scoring titles. He was named MPV, I think, once as well. MVP.
MPV is one of those vans.
Yeah, MVP.
Lots of kids in
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
And so on one level, he was a great player. But there's a downside. If you just look at the scoring stats, how much he scored, you'd say, hey, great player. But there's a whole bunch of other things there. For one, he never won a title, so no NBA ring. So that's
nice cold fingers there.
Yeah, that's a downside. And his field goal percentage was actually not as high as a lot of other great players, 42.5%. And that's because he took a lot of shots. He probably took a lot of Hail Mary shots, turnovers. Maybe he didn't pass as much to his teammates as he could have. And so the purpose of sort of talking about this is you've got to understand the whole picture with numbers. They'll give you the whole story. And often in our business, we're looking at one number but not really understanding all the numbers that give us the information we need to price properly.
Yeah, big time. And I suppose we're digging into that one key number today, and if we don't know that number or how to calculate it, we can run into some problems.
Yeah, I think the first thing, excuse me, I'm so excited about this, I'm just croaking up, mate. It's all on.
Choking on the goodness.
Choking on the goodness. Well, often your profit and your pricing it's actually being based on guesswork and just an estimate. You think your profit is good, but your profit and loss at the end of the day isn't giving you the results you want. You think job by job, this is quite good, but actually the overall profit is not where you want it to be. And what we find is there's a lot of confusion and lack of confidence in your numbers. You're not really quite sure what's going on. Something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. And it's really hard to manage stuff that you're uncertain about. It's very, very frustrating. So that happens, and then you just get inconsistent profit and cash flow. So if you don't know what's the most profitable. You get less profit in cash than you want, and that ultimately does stall the growth of your business.
Yeah.
You've got to be profitable to grow a great business, and you've got to be profitable to create a good lifestyle, because profit, money buys you the time, the ability to scale your business, to get team members and get all the stuff you need to take some of the pressure off you. So it's absolutely fundamental to success.
Yeah, big time. I've said it once, said it 1,000 times. If you're not in it to make profit, you should deregister your business, re-register as a charity.
Open a charity.
You pay less tax.
That's right.
But on the other hand, if we do know this number and how to use it, we have some pretty big upsides.
Yeah, I think you can become very scientific about your pricing and what work is profitable, and you're going to maximize the return on your most important asset, which is your tradespeople. You're going to get the most profit out of the work they do. That's massively important. And the profit off the jobs will start to translate through to profit in your profit and loss, and profit should turn into cash in your bank account. And it'll be consistent as well, because I think consistent profit is absolutely critical. So many businesses will make profit 1 month, 2 month, and then third month they have a big negative, a big reversal, and they kind of wipe out half the gains from the other 2 months. And that can cycle on over a year. It means you kind of tread water, because you give back the gains all the time. So that's important. And when you've got this nailed, it gives you the engine room, the foundation to just grow a really great business, to scale it, and then you can use that profit and cash flow to buy time back, create lifestyle, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, big time. So let's dig into it, eh? Where should we start?
I think the first thing, the most important thing with pricing work is not to start with the job. It's to start with what you're selling, which is actually an hour of your tradespeople or your technicians' labour. That's kind of your factory. That's the productive capacity that we have. And here's the thing is you can only sell each hour once.
Yeah.
And so if you can sell it once, if you sell it for X, it means you can't sell it for Y. And sometimes Y is bigger than X. And we want to know what's the biggest number that we can actually get and generate per hour. So we want to maximize the profit from that hour that the tradesperson or the tech has. That's very, very important. And the metric we use there is profit per hour. That's the really important metric, not per job. And we're going to dig into some numbers about how this works. And if you think about this, it's not just the labor. It's what happens with that hour of labor that's important. So this is the real important thing. When you sell an hour of your tradespeople's, technicians' labor, there are also materials associated with that. There also can be equipment associated with that. And so it's figuring out how all of that puts together to the total amount of revenue and profit that hour can generate, not just through the labor charge out, but through all the other things, the materials, the equipment that you use, the amount of work you can actually get through in that hour. That's the key thing.
That's a really important distinction. So for anyone listening, like if the first thing you heard there was, well, you're selling tradesmen's time, it's like, yes, but you're not selling their hourly rate. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the value of that hour altogether, including everything they do with it. So, people, we said at the start, oh, you're selling an hour of your tradesman's time, and so people, oh, I sell materials too. It's like, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's everything that happens within that hour and the value of it and what you can achieve, right?
Because with each hour, you're going to sell a certain amount of materials. For example, if a tradesperson is just doing service work, then there's a limit on the revenue in that. But if that tradesperson's on a digger or an excavator, the amount of revenue they can generate revenue in an hour could be considerably higher.
Absolutely.
A lot higher. Now, I'm not saying that that's the most profitable, but that's what we want to figure out.
The point of the podcast today is to really dig into that. So we'll get stuck into it. So I think the first thing first that I would start with is just a couple of terms just to make sure that we're on the same page. So, look, the first one for me is a lot of people will get confused between the term markup and the term margin. I'm not going to get right down into all of the details of exactly what a markup is and a margin is and how you calculate the difference, but just understand there is a difference. We've done a pod before on the difference between markup and margin, but in this case, just understand they're different. Now, if you're adding a markup, the hard part with that is that the reason we don't use it, because people will say, oh, well, a markup, it's going to look like more, a margin's going to look like less. We use margin because we want to make sure that we're getting all the money and not fooling ourselves. But the other key reason is that markup does not translate to your P&L. So when you're looking at other financial reports, you're not going to see a markup percentage anywhere, and that's why we want to be using margin. So just right off the bat, please understand we're talking about margin here and not markup. So when we're using this margin, that's going to be represented in one of two ways. So it can either be in a percentage or a dollar figure. Now, when you're looking on your profit and loss statement, your income statement, you're going to be looking at a dollar figure there, and that's going to be a percentage of your revenue. And so when we're talking of a margin, we're often talking about the percentage. So it's how many gross profit dollars as a percentage of how many revenue dollars. And the reason we do that is quite simple. And bear with me while I run through some numbers. Now, the reason we look at percentages and not dollar figures right off the bat is because we need a comparative point. So if I look at something and I say, this job here made $1,000 profit and this job here also made $1,000 profit, which one is better? It's very hard to answer that question because it depends how much that $1,000 was as a percentage of the job. You know, if job A was $1,000 profit, but the revenue was $10,000, it's a 10% profit. That's not that good. If job B is $1,000 profit of a revenue of $2,000, it's a 50% profit. So you'd take the 50% profit over the 10 all day long, because in theory, I could do a lot more of those $2,000 jobs in the same amount of time as the $10,000 jobs, and so I would end up netting more profit. So I hope you're still with me so far.
You're doing well, buddy. That's good.
This is why we look at percentages and not dollars, is because it gives more of a fair comparison.
You can compare.
But this is where it gets curly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's say job A makes a 50% net profit, and job B also makes a 50% net profit. So which one is better? Well, you're actually met with the same problem, aren't you? Because the hard thing is if job A is 50% net profit, and that one there is 50% of $1,000. Well, cool, I make $500. Job B is 50% of $1 million. I make $500,000. Now I'd rather bank $500,000 than 500, and so even that's not a fair comparison. That's why the stat that we're digging into today is when we look at gross profit in dollars, not percentage, but per hour of tradesman time. And then that way, that's the only fair comparison that we can do job to job, because if job A is making me $300 of profit per hour that a tradesman is on it, and job B is making me only $150 of profit for every hour that a tradesman's on it, well then job A is making me double the profit per hour of the day. And so you would have to do that every day of the week, because it doesn't matter how you slice it, that is going to net you more money. And so the stat we're looking at today is called gross profit in dollars per hour. It takes a little bit of extra calculation, but this is an absolute game changer when you're comparing jobs in your business and making decisions about what to do differently.
Yeah, and the point here is that hour that your tradesman spends, now we're going to figure out what's going to give us the most profit.
Yeah.
And therefore we can start to shift how we do our work, right?
Exactly.
That's the key thing, so we can actually focus on stuff that's most beneficial for the business.
And this will change your mindset on a lot of things, because at this point you stop thinking so much about what's the hourly charge out rate I have for my tradesman, and you start thinking about how much money can I make per hour on that type of work. And what that will lead to is that, yeah, sure, if I've got a job which is really heavy in materials, especially large commodity items that are actually not difficult, they're not time consuming to add to a job, they add a lot of revenue for no time and you just install them. For example, hot water units are a great example of this. Nice, expensive piece of materials. It's a commodity. It's actually hard to make a big percentage margin on something like that, but it adds a lot of revenue to a job for no extra time. It's just installation. It's not going to take a whole lot of your time compared to other time-consuming tasks. Whereas if I look at a different type of job, different way I could spend those hours, if I did something that's largely labor only, and I only charge the same charge out rate for per hour as I did on the hot water installation, I'm going to make a lot less money because I've got the same hourly rate for my tradesman, only I'm not clipping ticket on any materials. And so at that point, you start thinking, well, the hot water unit job is very profitable, but also for a labor-only job to be profitable, I actually have to charge a lot more per hour for my tradesman's time, or find other ways to jack the revenue up. Or otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and it's quite seductive when you look at the margin, because your labor-only work, let's say, has a very high margin, because you might charge out, you might get 50, 100%, but it's a small amount of money.
Exactly, 100% of bugger all.
Yeah. Whereas the water cylinder, your markup on that is low. It might be 10, 15, 20, 25%, 30%, whatever it is. And it doesn't, therefore your margin's not high, but you've just sold it, and it's an hour that's just sold more stuff without having to do more work.
Classic example of this, had a client called Mark a few years ago. Yeah,
loved racing cars.
Yeah. Mark, top dude.
Yeah.
He dealt almost exclusively with hot water installation. And basically he came to me one day and he said, "Hey Phil, in your program, you talk a lot about needing to get a 40% margin, and I've been trying to price my work at 40%, but I just don't know how I'm going to win any of this. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like I'm going to be priced way out of the market." And I said to him, I was like, "Mark, can we compare a couple of your jobs?" And we took one that wasn't a hot water unit installation, and he was like, "See, this is easy. I've got a 60% margin on this." And I said, "Well, what are you getting on your hot water units?" He said, "Oh, 28." And so it's nowhere near. And I said, "But Mark, if we do the numbers on it, what we see is that you're actually making double the profit per hour with the 28% on your hot water units as you are making way over 40 with this labour only work you're doing over here." And it just was like a penny drop. And actually what we found out is at his 28%, and I'm not saying this will be true for everybody at that exact number, but at that percentage, Mark was making very, very, very good profit on his hot water unit installations because it was taking him almost no time, comparatively, to sell a really high revenue job and still make a decent amount of money out of it. And so it's just really important that we can compare things apples for apples, or otherwise you might get seduced into really underpricing work that's low material, or you might actually get a little bit stuffed by thinking you're underpricing work that's high materials, and then you price yourself out of the market, or just don't really know where to start and feel really lost. And so it's important that we can have an apples for apples comparison so that we can make informed decisions and make the most amount of profit we possibly can for the hours we have available, because that's all you have.
Yeah, and there's the thing here is you cannot bank margin.
Exactly.
You bank dollars.
So how much did you make this month?
Yeah.
And someone goes 50%.
Yeah,
you can't go to the bank and,
awesome.
and buy
That's
a
right.
house with 50%.
So the amount of money you make is critical. Margin's a useful tool, but it's the actual dollars that count. And so you need to understand that. And here's the key thing is you definitely need to price work per job, understand per job performance, but we're doing that for the purpose of creating a profitable P&L at the end of the month. And it's how all those individual jobs flow into the P&L to create the profit for that month. And here's the thing. Obviously, you might have slightly lower margins, but if you're doing more revenue per that hour that you're paying for your tradesperson, overall, your P&L, you're still paying your tradespeople the same amount for that month. Your revenue will be higher, your margin will be higher, your profit will be higher. And that's really what we're driving at here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into how to actually do this.
So the way to do this is the process is relatively simple, really. You just need to create some categories for your work. And so it's figuring out in some detail what are the categories or the types of work that I do that I can compare. And so it's as simple as getting a category and then, say, getting 10 or 15 jobs in that category and actually doing the calculation on that. And then do that for the next category and the next category and the next category. Sometimes you might want to do it for clients as well. Maybe you work just for a couple of types of work. You could do it across clients because you'll find that the profit per hour per client is quite different based on client organization, maybe some rates. The way they just set things up can make a big difference. And so you create those categories, and then you just look, okay, that category is giving me a profit per hour of $127 or $138 or $200 or $63. And that gives you the baseline to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it even by crews. Like if you have all your team out in different crews, you might find crew A makes an average of $200 gross profit per hour, and crew B makes an average of 63. Or you might find that wherever you put James, that average tends to drag down.
James is a weapon, or he's not.
Yeah. So again, there's lots of ways you can slice this, and I think playing with those categories is important. I definitely start with type of work as a starting point, especially if you do a range of work. Compare your service work to your new builds, compare your large projects to, your maintenance, just having that comparison, because there'll be stark differences in the percentage margins you can charge for those work. And so being able to compare apples for apples gives you a better look at what's actually doing better for you. And so
let's say you do a lot of work with general contractors or building contractors. It might be that you have a line for high-end residential jobs. It might be a line for house bashing, like large volume building. There might be a line for renovation and remodeling work that you do, and so you'd line those up and see how they stack up.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of ways you can slice it, and obviously the more categories the better, because you can get really granular with what's actually performing and what's not, but starting off with a couple at least is going to give you a good look. The next thing you want to do is establish a benchmark. Now, this is a very important point, is that when you're pricing your work and you're setting targets for what is actually a good gross profit in dollars per hour, the answer is actually not going to be a fixed number. And we get this all the time. Hey, what percentage should I put on my work? Or once they get into gross profit in dollars per hour, they say, well, what's a good gross profit in dollars per hour? And the answer is better than you're doing now. And I know that sounds vague, but that is the answer. It doesn't matter where you're at. The point with this process is that it's constant and never-ending improvement. CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. You establish a benchmark of where you are now, what's the average you're achieving for that category, and then look to improve it. That's all. And then once you improve it, you look to improve it. And once you improve it, you look to improve it. Eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to reach a point where maybe you're unable to improve further than that. You're really topping out. You're starting to lose a lot of work if you priced any higher than that. And cool, so you leave it for a while and you focus on your next lowest performer. And if you're always looking at these different categories, just start with your lowest performer, improve that one until it's at a good place, then look at your next lowest performing category, do that one next. And that way you're only ever risking work by tweaking the price of work that's not profitable anyway. So there is nothing to lose.
Yeah, you sometimes with this, you might just look at some work and it just makes it crystal clear to you that is actually not profitable. It's actually not good for your business, and you might just not do that. So that's important. I think this is about pricing, but it's also about productivity. So when you get a level of granularity on that profit per hour, you'll see some types of work you're like, well, actually, the pricing's not really a problem here. There's some issues with the way this has been run. There's some issues with the way we're interacting with the clients, which is often what happens with, with building projects. There's disorganization and stuff. So it helps you drill into some of those causes as well. And so you'll get a lift through your pricing, but as you start to really focus on reasons, you'll get a lift through your productivity as well. And that's really powerful. So it's like a two cracks at the cherry to get more profit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think by doing that, what you're able to do is continue to improve on that benchmark you set for yourself, but don't try to just put a random number in there because you've heard other people do it. The point is seeing where you're at and edging that number up, forever, really, because it'll never stop. Even with just CPI increasing every year, it's like you're always going to be able to achieve more over time. So
I was just going to talk about this. We've sort of touched on it, is this challenge of high margin work versus low margin work, and it's good to do high margin work, and I should get rid of low margin work, and how this plays out. And I think we've talked about it. Is the effect of leverage and materials are really important to understand. So if you can sell more materials in that hour of tradesperson, that hour that they do of work, if you can get more materials, even if they're at a low margin, that's fine because you're actually making more money. So that's really important to understand. And like you said with Mark, he just got into that mindset. You've got to get into the mindset of how much money can I make in the hour, not what's the margin in the hour. The margin's just a useful tool to help you make more money, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second thing is equipment. And I love the fact that, I think of drainage work or large drainage work, where you can use equipment, where you can use a digger or an excavator to do work. Often that margin might be lower, but you can get so much work done in 1 hour and move so much work, if you like, that the actual revenue is higher and the profit per hour is higher. So that's really something to think about.
Yeah, joinery and cabinetry is the same. I mean, you got the leverage of the machines that you work with.
Yeah. So leverage of machines where possible is really powerful. That's why service work has to be a really high margin. Otherwise, the profit per hour is not
well. This
where it
opens
needs
up
to be.
The next consideration, right? Which is that when you start looking at this apples for apples comparison, what you might find is that certain types of work are a lot more profitable per hour than others. And what you need to understand, though, is that this is not where the story ends, because we're still looking at gross profit, which is the middle line of your profit and loss statement. There's still your entire OPEX category, your fixed costs, your fixed expenses to come off this before you get to your net. And at the end of the day, what we really bank is net profit, and that's really the game here. So you do have to consider with certain types of work, they need to be a higher gross profit because there are more operational expenses involved with that work. For example, if you're doing lots of small jobs, higher volume of work, lots of service work that will fall into this category, you need to make a higher gross profit in dollars per hour because there is more, back end that goes into it. There's, with lots of small jobs, you've got lots of scheduling, you've got lots of invoicing, there's lots of organization.
You've got two or three CSRs on the phone or checking emails.
And if you're doing lots of emergency reactive stuff, especially for homeowners, it's a lot of one-off jobs. There's a lot of marketing and stuff that's going to go into this as well to generate the lead flow to keep that busy. So there's a lot of back end that goes into this, and there's a lot of guys running out to jobs all on their own. There's so much organization involved. It needs to be more profitable because it's more expensive to run in the back end. On the other hand, if you do almost all large project work, well, it's a lot less marketing and sales because you're making one or two big sales now and then, which keep you busy for a long time. You got a lot of guys, in a group that are going to one place for maybe up to a year. And so there's no, organization in terms of scheduling and organizing the guys. They could take one car and go, it's a lot less to get people to site and them to know where to go and all that kind of thing. A lot less organization. And you might have things like progress payments and stuff, which might be monthly, but it's not like you're invoicing 20 times a day. So you don't have that same kind of back end need. You might have a little bit more in terms of like client care and things like that, and a lot more time spent in pricing, but it's not the same kind of back end need. So that type of work can achieve a slightly lower gross profit in dollars per hour because there's a lot less that's going to come off that number. And so it's important to take these things into consideration. Also, if you do a lot of specialist work, it needs to be higher profit per hour because it's hard to find these people. It's hard to train these people. It's hard to systemize the work. There's a lot more work that goes into the back end. If you're doing really easy stuff comparatively, now don't get me wrong, nothing is easy. Everything you guys do is really difficult. But some stuff is a little bit easier. It's a little bit more repetitive. It's much more easily systemized, and you can hire people with less of a skill set, and so they're easier to find, easier to train, easier to keep on task. Lot less overhead goes into actually nailing that work and getting it right. And so you've got to consider the difficulty coming off of that number when you decide whether or not you're achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah, and there's a lot to this, but I think the key message is understand your profit per hour. It will change your life. It will just transform the profitability of your business. You'll make great decisions, and it flicks into your marketing. Like once you know what type of work really makes the thing sing, then you go and target more of that work.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely critical because it's very easy to be a little bit needy and just like take whatever you can get. But things really change when you're really intentional about the type of work you want because you know that work is super profitable and you're going to get the best value from the tradespeople and the technicians in your business, the best value from that hour that they spend, and that will really be where this starts, flying for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we probably have talked on this for a while. So should we land this plane?
Let's do it.
The big point here is just that gross profit.
Yeah. And understanding how much profit you make per hour of your valuable tradesperson's or your technician's time, that is the key financial metric for driving your business profitability and ultimately cash flow. And once you start measuring this, you'll see your profit and your cash flow grow, and you'll feel confident and excited about your financial numbers and the future of your business. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.